what was that? Pickleball. It's there. And so, again, it's liquid money, no penalties. That one's paying 4.5% right now, which we're pretty excited about it. I looked up the average the national average at a bank in a savings account right now, and that national average is 0.61%. So we get excited. It's like 7 times and what the banks are paying. And one of the neat things about that, too, is for every dollar that's invested in that, about 35 cents of that is helping other churches, because we invest in church loan pools to build church buildings. And so that's y'all are a part of that. And that's a way that money's being leveraged for the kingdom. And so, but that fund is about $119 million, and so it's invested in lots of different assets. Government agency bonds and CDs and lots of different assets. And so, but again, y'all can get to it when you want to. I think y'all are y'all set up for electronic to where we can send money back and forth? Who's the treasurer? Are y'all set up electronically to work with us on short-term fund? Okay. It makes it a lot easier. And so, like, if y'all need money, so like 3 o'clock today, all those requests we received before 3 o'clock from churches needing money, and then we also receive requests from churches wanting to deposit money with us, okay? So by 3 o'clock, what we do after that time period is we set that up, and it occurs overnight. So those churches that need money back, it should be in your bank account by the morning. Your checking account. And same thing, we can actually pull money with y'all's authority for deposits. And so it's really easy to work that way. And so, yeah, just let us know if we can set that up for you. Oh, okay. Well, Tammy Willis, you may have worked with Tammy. Yeah, she's been with us 30 years, and so tremendous staff member. And so, but yeah, just holler at us, and Tammy, Lee, or Kim, we can all set that up for you. Pretty easy. We just need a voided check. So, all right. Any other questions on short-term fund that I can answer for you? Again, grateful to be able to partner in that way. We have the honor to work with about 500 churches in the state with short-term fund, and we're like their savings account, kind of like what y'all treat it. Some churches will have even multiple accounts. They'll have maybe their general savings, and then if you've got designated accounts, like a building account or building maintenance account or whatever, we keep all that money separate in separate accounts for you. So if that's helpful, just let us know. So. All right, so we're, again, grateful for that relationship. And did everybody get a handout that would like one? I've got one on short-term fund. I've got one on house and order that we're about to talk about. You need one? I think there's a couple in there, but yeah, there it is. All right, anybody else that would like that? So again, honored to be with y'all and to teach a house and order session this evening. Pastor Scott and I think we scheduled this back in March, and to be with you. And so again, been looking forward to it. Had a good drive down. Apparently there were traffic issues in Baton Rouge all over the place. So I went some back roads. My GPS took me. I had no idea where I was, but I made it in time. So that's good. So what I want to do is very briefly, I was going to introduce my family to you. So Corey is our, on the far left, he's 22-year-old and lives in Mansfield, Texas, just south of Arlington, and just got married a couple of months ago, and is a middle school pastor at a church there. In fact, probably teaching right now to middle schoolers there at that church. And then my wife and I, Shanna, we've been married 33 years and met at a Baptist church in Arlington, Texas, and okay, y'all get this. Y'all just had business meeting. Met in a business meeting, and I think talked the entire time. But I mean, that was, so there are good things that happen in business meetings besides pickle courts, okay? And so, but yeah, so we live right outside of Alexandria, a little over 3 hours, and we live out by Cosachi National Forest out there, and we love it out there and by the woods. And my kids tell me I live in the boondocks, and I tell them we like living in the boondocks. We just enjoy being out there. And then this is a wedding picture, right? So Whitney got married about 4 years ago, I think it was. I need to update my picture. And she works for a ministry in Dallas-Fort Worth area helping to place foster children. And so she loves that. In fact, they're just about, they got their third foster child over the weekend. Preemie just reached 5 pounds. And that's where my wife's at, in Dallas-Fort Worth area with Whitney right now. And then she married Stephen. Stephen's a high school soccer coach in Springtown, west of Fort Worth. And so, yeah, just want to introduce our family to you. So the foundation, we're your ministry. We are one of the Louisiana Baptist ministries. You've got Louisiana Christian University. You've got Louisiana Baptist Children's Home, the Baptist Message, and the Foundation. So we're all separate ministries, but under the same umbrella as far as Baptist family life and just serving the Lord in various contexts. And so we part of our ministry is helping manage money, as you all know, and grateful to be able to do that. Also manage endowments, which are like long-term funds for different purposes, and do a lot of teaching in the state, on estate planning and some of that arena, and love to do that. We are often, Jared Price, our attorney, and I are often out in churches and love to do that and just teach. And then we started some church biz services over the last couple of years, like accounting for churches and capital stewardship campaigns and church loans and a computer support line for Louisiana Baptist churches, online giving, and then payroll services. So we've started all these in the last couple of years and trying to be a kind of one-stop shop for church business. And so, again, grateful. I think y'all use for, who do y'all use for accounting, Scott? We got, Simplify? Okay. Yes, sir. That's okay. I just remembered that. Yeah, y'all, that's our partner at Simplify Church and with Josh Henry. And so, they've a lot of these we're using partners instead of recreating the wheels, and then on the individual side, we have the honor to often be working with individuals just about on a daily basis. We're working with some Louisiana Baptists somewhere in the state that wants to do something special financially for their church beyond cash. So like last week before, we received a stock gift. And it's not for us, but we receive it and sell it and send money on to who they want to benefit as far as their church or their ministries. So we work with stocks and bonds and real estate and got our first Bitcoin call a while back. I mean, people get very creative in their giving when God tweaks their heart. And so we get to work with some great folks. Estate gifts, anything beyond cash. And so, again, honored to do that. And so what I want to do, I want to kind of jump into our session this evening. And if you're a note person, I always like to provide these workbooks, and it's upside down for some reason, if you've opened yours. And so that's interesting. But anyway, so just turn it upside down to get it right. And so the agenda, we won't have time to get to everything this evening, obviously. But the agenda that we'll follow is on the far left. There's a notes section on the far right. And on the back inside, the back cover is our information, our contact information. And I wanted to just kind of remind you that we are a free resource to you because of cooperative program. So if we can help you now, if we can help you 3 years from now, we're there to serve and partner with you. And so would love to do that. And so there's 2 names on there. My name, Jeffrey Steed, and then Jared Price, I mentioned there's our attorney, and then also director of gift planning. And so anything we can do for you, feel free to reach out to us, okay? And so what I want to do is again, jump into our session. Thus says the Lord, set your house in order. And the house that we're talking about has to do more with the state area and some of that area, which whether you're the age of 20, whether the age of 100, whatever age you are, I really hope it's going to be helpful to you this evening. I was praying earlier today that God would use information that we're going to talk about in a way that's helpful to you, your family, and potentially His kingdom. So I really do hope it's going to be helpful to you, okay? And so let's kind of jump into it. I want to accomplish this in our brief time together. I want to talk about how to set your house in order biblically. So we're going to lay a biblical foundation for what we're talking about here this evening. And then I'm going to talk about how to protect and provide for your family. I had a woman come up to me before a service. This is a while back. I was going to be teaching there. And she said, Jeff, I know why you're at my church today and talking about estate planning. And she said, I'm not sure if I need that. I said, well, tell me a little bit more. And she said, well, I've told my family everything I want done when I get to go to heaven one day. And I was real nice about it, but I said, in Louisiana, it doesn't matter what we say. It has to be in writing. It just has to be in writing through a will. And so, and she said, oh, and we were able to help her. So that's part of what we're going to talk about this evening is how to protect and provide for our families and how to control the distribution of your assets one day, how to reduce or eliminate taxes, and that's a big one for some folks. And then as well, in addition to your family, how to impact the kingdom, the church and other ministries that you have a passion for. And so that's kind of where we're heading, okay? So I wanted to find two definitions in the beginning because I'm going to kind of use these over and over. One is called estate. And some of you are thinking, well, Jeff, that's what I have when I go to heaven one day. That's true, but it's everything you have right now. Everything you have that God's blessed you with. And, it's not something we think about every day, right? But it's your real estate and bank accounts and heirlooms. It's all of that, okay? And when you start thinking about that, you realize, and I realize, how blessed we are. God's provided for every need, plus, beyond that. And so, again, it kind of causes a sense of gratitude to come over the heart, when you start thinking about all that He's provided to us for a livelihood. And so the second definition I want to give to you, I don't have a slide for it, but the second one is called probate, okay? And some of you are familiar with that because you've been the executor for a family member who's passed on. And probate, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here, but basically probate is when, so we'll take me. Let's say I get to go to heaven today, right? And my will goes through probate, which is a court process to make sure that everything that's in that will is going to be accomplished, okay? And there's some folks that like to avoid probate and all that. I actually like it because it's going to make sure that everything that's in that will is going to be done. And so, and we have a pretty efficient system in Louisiana for probate. Any estate planning attorneys in the room by chance? I was going to ask them to testify to that. But we've got a pretty efficient system. And the great majority of the time, it's pretty streamlined. And so, by the way, have y'all noticed in Louisiana, we have a special word for everything. Have y'all noticed that? Okay. So we have a special word for probate in Louisiana. What is that? Anybody? Succession. Succession, okay? And like I said, some of you are familiar with that if you've been the executor for a family member who's passed. And so again, probate or succession is just that core process to make sure that everything that in that will is done, will be done, okay? So with those two definitions, I want to kind of jump into a biblical foundation for what we're talking about here this evening. Principle one, and again, if you'd like to follow on your agenda there, we're under that number 2 there. I'm going to give you 4 biblical principles. One is we should set our house in order. And some of you are probably already thinking about that Old Testament story that this has to do with. And it's found over in Isaiah. And so let me set the stage for this a little bit. So God told prophet Isaiah, I want you to give the king, and I want you to give the king a heads up. He's about to pass on, right? Anybody remember the king's name by chance? Hezekiah. Not a name we use every day, right? But if back then, kings had a lot of power. Like they could do whatever they wanted to an individual, or whatever they wanted to, okay? And if I had been Isaiah back in the day, and God told me to go to the king and tell him he's about to die, I might be a little hesitant with that because I don't know how he's going to respond, right, the king. But I feel like I know Isaiah just a little bit from his personality in Scripture. I don't think he hesitated at all. I think he went straight to the king and let it be known, right, what God wanted him to do. And so he said, thus says the Lord, set your house in order, you shall die and not live. It's a wake-up call, right, to the king to get his affairs in order, to get his plans done. And so he had a heads up. But most of us don't have a heads up when we're going to heaven, which I think is a good thing typically. But because of that, we need to make sure we've got good plans in place to protect our family and to provide provisions to those that we want to impact. So this photograph represents 70% of Americans related to not having their house in order. 70% of Americans, it doesn't matter age, doesn't matter income level, where you live in the nation, whatever. 70% across the board don't have plans in place, okay? And what happens in Louisiana when someone passes away without a will, the state of Louisiana has a backup will, and they have to. I mean, they've got to have a system in place if folks don't have one on their own. I read it the other day, not the most exciting reading, I'll tell you. But it would probably not accomplish what 99% of us would want accomplished. So part of what I want to encourage you to this evening is to make sure you've got a will. To make sure, it doesn't matter your age, it relates to all of us, right? Any day, any of us can go to heaven, right? And I'm reminded of that frequently, right? When a friend passes or whoever, family member. And so it's, again, so important to make sure we're on the offense and making sure we've got that will done. And it's really part of stewardship, right? Related to what God's blessed us with all these years. And so that's part of what I want to encourage you this evening. If you're in the 30% that have plans done, I want to encourage you to think about, is it up to date? Do you feel like it accomplishes everything that you feel like God wants you to accomplish with that? And then if you don't have one, that 70%, I just encourage you to get it done, just to, again, make sure you've got good plans in place. Biblical principle number 2, we're to honor God with all that we have. And we'd all agree with that, you know. We're to honor God with all that we have. And there's a great verse that talks about this over in Proverbs 3:9. And it says, honor the Lord with your wealth and from the first of all your produce. Now we get the last part of that. The first of all our produce, you know, based upon other context of scriptures, is dealing with what? Tithe, right? And we know the importance of that, giving 10% off the gross. But the first part of this can be easy to forget sometimes, or at least for me. And it's honor the Lord with your wealth. Now, theologically, you can plug, you know that word estate we used a while ago? You can plug that in here theologically because it's what you have, right? Your wealth, your estate, as far as what you have, your assets. And so we're to honor the Lord, you know, with everything we have. And y'all know this. I mean, you know, like myself, I own nothing. I don't own a penny. Everything I have, God allows me to be a steward, a manager over, right? Every single thing I have. He owns it all, right? The cattle on 1,000 hills, David talks about in Psalms, he owns it all. And so he allows me to be a steward over what he entrusts with me related to assets. And that's true for all of us. And again, this verse is a great reminder that we're to honor him in the way we manage that as far as what those assets. And so that's even on a daily basis, right? Think about that for a moment. Honor the Lord. Doesn't talk about when we pass away. Doesn't matter. I mean, it's not talking about this or that. It's talking about just simply honor the Lord with what he allows us to have and to manage. And so that means on a daily basis and even buying decisions, at least major one in my mind, but also impacts, you know, what through our wills and estates and honoring him with from a stewardship standpoint with what he's blessed us with. I'm going to give you a quote, and I'll tell you in just a moment why I'm making this, but let me go and read it. As believers in the room this evening, the most significant stewardship decision of our entire life will likely take place through our will. You might say, Jeff, why are you saying that? It's because the largest personal transfer of wealth, whether that's $10, whether that's $10 million, it doesn't matter the amount. The largest personal transfer of wealth for you and I will likely be through that will. In our entire life, the largest transfer. And so, now I have some folks that tell me once in a while, Jeff, I'm going to spend it all in retirement. I might leave the kids a few bucks, but I'm going to spend it all. And you've seen the bumper sticker, right, on the back of the RV. I'm spending my kids' inheritance, right? But I'm just telling you, that's not what happens the great majority of the time. And the reason is this. What's the number one fear in America for those in retirement? The number one fear in America for those in retirement is what? That's it. That's it. So if you're tempted to have that fear, you're not alone, okay? But because of that fear of running out of money, we become very conservative often when we retire. And we live off, a lot of times, we might have some Social Security coming in or some pension. We might have some investments or pulling the income off of that, okay? And so we're often living on that income, in retirement. So that corpus or principal is sometimes even growing in retirement. You might say, Jeff, that doesn't make sense. I know. But because of fear of running out of money, we become very conservative with what we have. And so for most of us, and because of that fear and just being conservative in retirement years, the largest transfer that we'll make in our entire life will likely take place when we step into heaven one day through our will. And so, which means what? The most significant stewardship decision of our entire life will likely take place through our will one day. And so that's part of what I want to encourage you this evening is to really think of all that we're talking about here this evening as a stewardship, related to what God's blessed us with. Number 3, we're to provide for our families, and we all agree with that, We're to provide for our families in relation to estates. And I would say especially if you're in charge of a minor child, those below 18, I so encourage you to have a will, especially to make sure you're properly taking care of them if you were no longer around. And I realize some of what we're talking about here this evening is not the easiest thing to think about, but I encourage you to think about it. I encourage you to make sure you've got your plans in place. And by the way, some of you have grandchildren that are minors, and I want to encourage you to encourage your kids to get a will done. Okay? They may or may not have much in the way of assets at that point in life, but if they have children, it is so important. But again, through our will, we need to make sure that we provide for them. Also, just about every audience I have the honor to speak to, there's at least 1 or 2 in the room that have a special needs adult child. And if that's your scenario, you don't have plans done, I encourage you to reach out to our office and talk to Jared, our attorney. There are some special circumstances involved related to special needs adult children to where they can, if they were to inherit suddenly from mom and dad, they can be disqualified from all their government assistance. And just about everybody that's special needs adult children, from my understanding, they're on government assistance. But they can be disqualified just like that if they inherit from mom and dad, and certain levels. And so something real important, again, I encourage you to reach out to Jared if that's your situation. There may be other family members that would be if you were no longer around, that would be in a difficult situation financially. I had a daughter come up to me a while back, and she said, my mom lives with me and is in a financially destitute situation. She said, my mom has nothing. And in fact, the daughter is saying this to me. She said that she is depending upon me to put food on the table every night. And the daughter asked me, should I put my mom in my will? I said, absolutely. I believe any family member of legitimate need, that's part of our responsibility. And so again, thinking about family members that would be, if you weren't around, that would be of a financial need. And so I'm going to give you a verse, but I'm going to put a disclaimer on it. Paul was not talking about estate planning, okay? But he, in 1 Timothy, y'all know, he wrote all these letters to Timothy, right? He was coaching him in the faith, mentoring him in the faith. And so he wrote him all these letters. And one of those letters over in 1 Timothy, in chapter 5, verse 8, said, but if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Pretty strong words from Paul, and y'all know that was his personality. He came across pretty strong. But again, it kind of reminds us, I believe, the importance of taking care of family. And so, biblical principle number 4, we're to be generous for the blessings that God gives to us. So we'd all agree with that, You've heard the phrase before, God often blesses so that what? Being blessing of the people, His church and His kingdom, And this is actually scriptural. I had the honor to preach on this a while back. It's found over in 2 Corinthians 9:11. And it says this, you will be enriched in everything for all liberality, which through us is producing thanksgiving to God. Now, let's break this down. I want to look at the first 2 lines of it. What's another word for enriched? Another word for enriched. Blessed, okay? So the other word I want to bring out is liberality. What's another word for liberality that Scripture talks about? Anybody? Generosity, okay? Let's reread the first 2 lines of that based on those words. You'll be blessed in everything for all generosity. So that phrase you've heard over the years, God often blesses so that we can be a blessing of the people in His church kingdom. as far as the whole idea of generosity, He blesses us so that we can be generous. I was thinking about the whole idea of generosity and estate planning and all that a while back, and at the heart of what we're talking about here this evening related to estate planning is generosity. So in a will, typically this is what happens. I'm going to paraphrase for a minute here, but all the last bills and debts are paid first. Okay? All those are done away with. The credit card bills, the last utility bill, all those bills are done away with. The executor takes care of this, right? And then what's left, secondly in that will, if you have certain assets going to certain individuals, okay? And you don't have to have anything in that section, but you can. So let's say you want to give your china dishes to your daughter, your rifles to your son, whatever, okay? You would list that out in the will. Then, thirdly, whatever's left is called the residuary. It's just what's left, okay? But the residuary is left to individuals, to ministries, whoever you want to bless as far as what you have valued in life. And it's usually done in percentages. And those percentages add up to 100. Okay? That's basically how a will works, So again, the bills and debts are paid first. Any individual items go out next that you want to go out next. And again, you don't have to have that section at all. And then thirdly, what's left is distributed based on percentages. That's basically how it works. So when you or I are enjoying heaven, right? Our executor is kind of down here working with the will stuff, right? And again, he or she is just giving assets away based upon your will without strings attached. They're just giving it away, right? And to individuals, to ministries, and that's generosity. That's at the heart of generosity, right? And so again, so these have been 4 biblical principles that I wanted to give to you. And one of the ones I really want you to remember is all that we're talking about is about stewardship, being good stewards related to what God's blessed us with, over the years. I want to kind of jump into the logistics a little bit here. And so a question I've received a lot over the years is, Jeff, summarize it for me. What do people typically have related to documents, estate planning documents? So the first is, again, a last will and testament. Testament means testimony. Our last testimony when we leave this place is right there in black and white. That's what's important to us. And there are 3 areas. Now, those of you that have a will, it's several pages long, right? And if you don't have a will, you've at least seen one. There's several pages, lots of legalese in there, legal words and all that. I'll tell you about 95% of that language is in all wills. Okay, it's like a template. Now, don't get me wrong, it needs to be in there. But what we get to customize is a small part of that. And these are the 3 areas people typically customize. Number 1, who's executor? The executor is the quarterback over that estate. They are legally responsible to follow everything that's in there. And then, like with anything, you need a backup, at least one backup, in case he or she's not able to fulfill that role or doesn't want to. I mean, they can decline to serve too. And so first part of that will that we're customizing is basically, again, who is executor, who's in charge of the will. And it's good to, in my opinion, it's good to think about somebody that maybe a family member or whoever that's good with logistics or details. Because there's going to be some details, okay? They're usually working with an attorney to make sure everything's done right. But it's just, that's of help if they are a details-oriented person, right? And so so that may be a spouse, that may be a child, that may be somebody in the room today. But you want to talk to them before you put them in there, okay? But again, that's the first part that we customize as executor. The second part that may or may not relate to you is related to guardianships, okay? And so if you're in charge of a minor child, it is so important to make sure you've got a guardian named in there. I had a single mom come up to me a while back, and she said, that she'd been thinking about it, and I think she had a 9-year-old, and she said, I've already told so-and-so that I want her to take care of my daughter if something happened to me. And I told her I admire you for thinking through that. A lot of people don't think about that. But I told her in Louisiana, it won't matter. You've got to have a will. You've got to have that language in there. Otherwise, it is up to the state of Louisiana who's going to raise a child. And so now the state of Louisiana often wants to find a family member to play that role. Again, these are for folks that don't have a will, and they pass away and they have a minor child. The state of Louisiana often wants to find a family member, but it may not be the family member that we want raising our children. And what I mean by that is, like in my own family, extended family, not all of them are believers. And I would not have wanted them raising our kids. I just wouldn't have, because they wouldn't have been brought up in a Christian home. And so part of our, I think, a huge responsibility as a parent with minor children is to make sure we've got those plans in place. And so the second part of what we customize in a will, so first part, executor, like who's in charge of the will. Second part, who's in charge of the children, the guardian. Third part is, who do you want to bless one day? Who do you want to be generous to one day? Individuals, ministries, whatever. I encourage folks to think about what they have valued in life. At least their big values, and to leave impact somehow to those values. And so those are really the three areas that we get to customize. That's about 5% of a will. Everything else, again, is usually boilerplate. And so second document that I'll mention is called a durable power of attorney. Some of you know what this is because you're the power of attorney agent for a sister, brother, parent, or whoever. And typically so we'll take me, for example. Let's say today that I go into a coma, okay? My power of attorney, and it's called the agent, is that person that I name. They can step in my shoes at that point and be me for all practical purposes. They're going to pay the bills. They're going to keep things rolling financially, okay? 2 weeks later, I come out of that coma. Things just continue as normal, okay? Hopefully this is a document that you never need, but it is so important to have it, okay? I've pastored years ago, and probably Scott could attest to this as well, but when there's not a power of attorney and something happens to mom or dad, it can be a mess, okay, trying to take care of them. I know that. And so this, again, is a document that really helps make sure that you've got somebody as there in the wings, per se, that can help financially, take care of everything. And by the way, this is only valid while you're living. I was in a church a while back, and I really got the same question 3 different times, and they were asking, does it survive when somebody passes away? Does that power still exist? And it doesn't. It ends when someone passes away. Who takes over at that point? Executor, right, of the will, okay? So power of attorney over finances. The power of attorney over medical, it's the same idea. It's somebody that can step in your shoes and make medical decisions if you can't make those decisions at the time, okay? So the first 3 documents are usually customized towards the individual, right? They're personalized. The fourth one, though, is usually a form, okay? A living will. If you've had a procedure done lately or somewhat major test, they in all likelihood ask for this, and if you don't have a living will, they'll usually put a form in front of you real quick because they want to know what to do. It's like a letter to your doctor, what to do or what not to do in certain circumstances. And so these are the documents that people tend to have. One question I get a lot is, do you file these documents or what do you do with them? And typically what people do with them is they'll put them in a little safe at the house or put them in a safety deposit box or whatever. Whoever your executor is would be, let them know where those documents are. If they're locked up, if there's a combination, let them know how to get in there because it can be a mess if they can't get into there. Our safety deposit box at the bank, make sure their name's on it, okay? And they know where the key is because that's a whole other issue if they can't get into the box, and that's where your will is. Otherwise, it's got to be drilled, and there's expense. Anyway, it's an ordeal. So they're not filed. I mean, there's no reason to file them, right? I mean, because you may change your mind, right? And people do sometimes. They change their mind. What's in the will? And so usually folks just put them in the safe and let their executor know where they're at. By the way, that living will, it's really good, in my opinion, to give a copy to your doctor, your primary, and they'll scan it in the system to make sure that they know your instructions, okay? Next, let me check our time here. Kind of thinking through what I need to finalize here. Really, we've talked about most of this, executor and agents and guardians. Let me mention this on trust. There's two different types of trust that I wanted to mention. One is called for minor children, or for any adult, or for adult children as well. That's really a section in your will that says if anybody inherits and they're below a certain age, it goes into a trust. And the trustee, a manager, can be a family member, whoever. But a lot of times, minor children, and sometimes adult children, are not always good with the money. And so a trust kind of helps protect them a little bit to where they get it over a certain number of years. If you want, because of time, I need to kind of move forward. But if you want to talk more about how all that works, if you'll holler at our office, we can get you more information on that, okay? Also, there's something called a revocable. You see that word up there? That all that means is changeable, okay? It can be changed while you're living. Revocable living trust. There may be one or two in the room that have those. They're pretty popular these days. The main purpose of those is to avoid probate or succession, okay? Now, some of you are thinking, well, Jeff, a while ago you said in Louisiana we have a pretty efficient system for handling estates, and we do. Where we see people use these the most is when they have property or real estate in multiple states. Because every state that you have real estate, it goes through probate in that state. That's where it gets cumbersome on the executor, and it becomes more expensive on your estate, which means less going to who you want to benefit. And so most people, though, we see, if everything you have is here in Louisiana, we typically just see people have a basic will, it gets the job done, right? And so, but again, any of these topics, we can talk quite a bit more. And I'll actually have a forum at the end. If you've got any questions on anything, we're glad to get you more information on it. Let me tell you what. Trying to decide whether to go through this. So let me briefly say, two different types of taxes involved with the states. And one of those is called the estate tax, or some people call it the death tax. And it's at the federal level. From my understanding, we don't have one in Louisiana, state. Now, that can change any day, okay? But at this point in time, it's just the federal. And you see the exclusion up there? Like for one individual, it's $13.99 million. If you're married, it's double that, okay? So if you're below that and you passed away in 2025, in fact, if about 95% of Americans passed away this year, we'd owe no estate tax. Because Shannon and I, my wife and I, if we passed away this year, we would not have an estate tax. We're like way below, you know. And but you know, realistically, that would not impact most of us at this point. I will tell you, this is going to change at the end of the year, and we don't know what Congress is going to do. It may be part of this whole tax bill that's being worked on. I hadn't seen any details related to states related to that. They're kind of keeping that pretty private for some reason, a lot of the details of that tax bill, but we'll have to see. But like with anything, we can only plan on the facts of today, right? And so part of what I want to encourage you to do is if you don't have plans done, to make sure you have those done. And you can always change them, you know, at some point. The other type of tax is related to retirement accounts. That's what that IRD tax is. Most everybody in the room has a retirement account. And it may be a 401k if you've been in the corporate world. If you're a teacher, I think it's a 457. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, if you're a teacher. If you're a minister, it's a 403b, IRA accounts. Whatever numbers and you know, letters you want to use, they all work the same way, right? And I'm talking traditional, not Roth. But you put money in there, and it grows tax deferred all these years. And at what year, what age do you have to start taking money out at this point? 73. They just changed that, I think, a couple of years ago. So you have to start taking money out, and the government doesn't forget that you hadn't paid tax on it, right? So as you pull it out, and that's called required minimum distributions, right? As you pull that out, basically you have to pay tax on it. And then also you've got a beneficiary form on those accounts, right? It may have been a long time ago when you filled those out. And by the way, I encourage you to make sure those are up to date, those beneficiary forms, because those bypass the will, okay? those don't go through the will typically. So it's real important to make sure that those are up to date. But so our heirs will, whoever inherits those would pay tax on it. Again, the government doesn't forget. And so I was working with a couple, this is a while back, and they said, Jeff, we have a daughter and we have 5 ministries, including our church, we want to help through our estate. And I said, okay. And he said, but we want to owe our estate, we don't want any tax from our estate. We don't want our daughter to owe anything. We don't want anybody to owe anything. I said, okay. So what we ended up doing is, see, the retirement accounts, that's where all that tax is built up, right? And so what we ended up doing is the beneficiaries of their retirement accounts is whom? It's those ministries, their church, because they don't pay tax, right? And then everything else, the house, everything else is going to the daughter. And so unless Congress does something really crazy, every penny of tax has been erased from their estate. And so kind of a neat way to do it. You know, when you and I get to go to heaven one day, there's only 3 buckets we can give to. 3 buckets. Bucket number 1 are individuals. We can give away to any individual we want. Part of the privilege in having a will. The second bucket that we can give to out of our estate is basically ministries, charities that have been important to us while we're living, right? And called nonprofits. And then third bucket is what? Anybody? Government tax. Those are only 3 buckets we can give to, all right, when we pass away. So one of the things I want to encourage you to do this evening is how do you minimize the tax? Unless you think that's a good thing, but otherwise, how do you minimize the tax? How do you maximize what your family as well as the kingdom's receiving from your estate? And there's some really creative ways, like that retirement account example that I gave to you, of how to do that, of how to accomplish that. And just about every day we're working with somebody to help them do something special. So we're, again, free resource to you. Let me tell you what, let me ask you a question. So, and you may have seen the slide already, but what's the average amount of time it takes for every penny of an inheritance to be spent by an individual? The average amount of time it takes for every penny of an inheritance to be spent by an individual. Anybody? A year? Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, it depends, right? It depends. I was teaching a similar session in Kerrville, Texas, many years ago, close to San Antonio, and a guy stood up when I asked that question. And probably Scott would attest to this as well, but when somebody stands up, when you're teaching or preaching, you don't know what's coming next, okay? And guy stood up and said, Jeff, I got to say something. I said, well, please do, because I had to ask him this question. He said, the answer to that question is 18 months, because that's how long it took me to spend my parents' inheritance. And then literally, I put up the next slide. It's a year and a half, 18 months. And so you probably know where I'm going with this, but what if you could leave part of your estate of what God's blessed you with to impact His kingdom, and that would last a lot longer than 18 months, We have the honor at the foundation to often work with folks, often, that have a passion to do that. And part of what we do is when individuals are willing to at least tithe their estate, to leave at least 10% of their estate to the kingdom. That could be your church, it could be whatever it is. We're neutral. As long as it's benefiting God's kingdom, with at least 10%, we can help you get documents done, like basic wills, and it's free. That's part of, Jared our attorney helps folks through that process, and he's made it pretty efficient. Usually it's about an hour-and-a-half process when people have their documents. And again, there's no catch to that. I mean, it's free. Again, our only requirement is that somebody's leaving at least 10% of the kingdom, and that they pick as far as which ministries. And so that's part of maybe a way that we can help add value to you and kind of help you do that, and making sure you got your plans to protect your family. And so I'm going to finish up really quickly here. So again, when we get to go to heaven one day, our wills, what we distribute as far as through those wills, there's only 3 buckets. First bucket is individuals, right? Those individuals we want to impact, family members, friends, somebody in the room tonight, Second bucket, it's like our ministries that we've had a passion for, our church, other ministries. And then the third bucket is government tax. So again, part of what I want to encourage you to do, whether you have plans done or not at this point, is how do you minimize that tax and maximize what your family receives as well as the kingdom. And so I have the honor to often be in churches and love to do it. And I've got an evaluation form. There are a couple of folks that could help me hand these out. Let's see here. Can somebody take this left section over here? I appreciate that. Can somebody take the right? Thank you. I appreciate it. So while we're handing those out, I'll kind of tell you what's here. It's basically an evaluation form. And so you might be thinking, well, Jeff, I wish you would have covered XYZ. Please put that on here because it helps me kind of better this as I'm in other churches and Jared's in other churches. But it's also an opportunity. There's a great box. If you want more information on wills or guardianship for children or you know, how to give out of IRA accounts, whatever it is, okay? Thank you. Did you have enough of those for over here? You still, okay. Everybody but you, huh? So if you want more information on something, I want to remind you, we are a free resource to you, okay? Because of a cooperative program that y'all give to, that y'all invest in. And I'll tell you that we are very private. The foundation is very private, confidential with whatever's on here, okay? And so the last 2 minutes of our session this evening, I want to just, if y'all can help me with this and anything that we can do to kind of better this presentation. And then if you want more information on something, feel free to check a box or write in a question. It is often that somebody will just write in a question that they want answered. And so if that's you, please let us either know an email or phone so that we can follow up with you, okay, and get you that information. But I'm just going to pause for like 2 minutes, if that's okay, and if y'all can help us with this, that'd be very helpful. By the way, if you're like a QR code person, we've got the same form from a QR code. Feel free to take some more time with that, but to respect your time, I need to go and dismiss this, but feel free to take some more time to fill that out if you need to. And thank you for the feedback on those. Those that want more information, like I said, we'll follow up with you. Usually, Jessica Willie from our office would contact you to set up a time just to visit over the phone with Jared. And I wanted to mention her name to you because if you're like me, every day I'm getting like all these calls from folks, I don't know who they are, phishing, I think is what they call it, or emails from, just spammers and all that. So if you get a call or email from Jessica Willie in our office, she's legit, okay? She's with the foundation, and we'll be glad to serve you in any way and help you get information you want. If you can do me a big favor before you leave this evening, and I tell you what, we'll take this front chair. If you can just put that face down right here. I realize there may be some private information on there. If you can just put it face down, that'd be great. And again, we'll keep that very confidential. with our office. So thank you for the opportunity to be with you this evening. Hopefully something